All right, so we are going to start with your amazing work, the work that won you the Nobel. So most people in the room are familiar with Schumpeter's work back in the 40s, the concept of creative destruction. I think what's interesting is his words are described as poetic. Some have called it like a tragic drama. And now you've taken this concept to an extraordinary level, formalized it, put rigorous quantitative analysis behind it. Can you explain for all of us here your journey? Yeah. What did you do? What is the breakthrough? Why were you awarded the Nobel?
Well, thanks. So I will say there is a lot of luck and in all this and and failing but so in a nutshell, in my students' days, the leading growth model was the so-called neoclassical growth model, Robert Solow. And it was a model based on capital accumulation. You produce flow of wealth with a stock of capital, and you save part of the flow to increase the stock of capital, which allows you to produce more. And that was the leading growth model. But Robert Solow and others himself was aware of the fact that you cannot grow on forever just based on capital accumulation, because there are decreasing returns to capital accumulation. You run out of steam at some point. You need something else, and the something else is technical progress. But Robert Solow could not explain where technical progress was coming from. And we talk about the Solow residual, which was everything you cannot explain was this in black box. And I wanted to know what was inside the black box. And there was Schumpeter, of course, that talked about creative destruction, the notion, whereby new innovation displaces old technologies. So that's the concept that he introduced in his writings. But when in my students' days, Schumpeter was a mundanity, it was a curiosity. He was not mainstream at all. You would hear about creative destruction in a course on history of economic thought, or you would hear about creative destruction on the IO class, but en passant, there was no model, there was no empirics. So with my co-author Peter Howitt, who won the prize with me, we decided to write a new growth model which would encompass creative destruction, but would be a model that you can solve and you can confront with data, and which is a way to put industrial organization into macro growth model. So it was really the beginning of putting micro into macro. And the model would revolve around three main ideas. First, long-run growth is driven by cumulative innovation. You always stand on giant shoulders. You build upon each other. The second idea is that innovations do not come from heaven. They result from entrepreneurial activities that are motivated by the prospect of innovation rents. When you innovate, you get a rent for a while until you are being superseded by better technologies. And the third idea is creative destruction. New innovation displaces old technologies. And at the heart of this theory, there is the firm, there is enterprises. So it's very different from Solow. There is a contradiction. On the one hand, you need innovation rents to generate innovation. But on the other hand, yesterday's innovators are tempted to use their rents to prevent subsequent innovations because they don't want themselves to be subject to creative destruction. And managing a market economy, it's how you manage this contradiction. And you always have this phenomenon that yesterday's innovators, they grow, and you want them to grow, but eventually they will use their rents to prevent newcomers. And that's where competition policy is important. That's where, and you get into this. And so fast-growing economy, modern economy, is one where all the time you have new talents coming in. You let them grow, you let them create firms, but you want to make sure that once they've grown, they won't prevent new talents from coming in. And that's the difficulty, that's the challenge. So I did a bit long, I'm sorry.
No, that is fabulous.
Now we'll be short, I promise.
We're going to come back to this, but I wanted to set the table with the Nobel and the content around it. Now just a quick one on you.
Yes.
So amazing background. I found one of the best ways to understand someone is to go back to lessons in their history, where they grew up, some of the stories from childhood. And your childhood is absolutely fascinating. The son of Philippe Aghion, the visionary founder of Chloe, who completely revolutionized fashion, going from haute couture and how we were all shackled as women to pret-a-porter, empowering women. You spent your childhood surrounded by amazing artists like Karl Lagerfeld. Your father was a prominent intellectual and an art gallery owner. And from those early days, you became a Nobel Prize winner in economics. weave that together. What happened in your childhood that explains who you are
Yeah,
today?
that's right. Well, no, it's true. So one thing is that Karl Lagerfeld would do my German homework, and that's why I didn't learn any German. Yeah. No, I mean, it's true to be going, with artists, with innovators, there is something there. My father wanted to do social revolution in Egypt. He failed. My mother wanted to do revolution in fashion. She succeeded. And it's true, it's a mixture. What got me into economics, it's true to be surrounded by, inventors. I'm sure that must have, there is something there. I think there was the thing that I was very politically motivated because I wanted to make the world a better place. I was a post-68 French, good left wing, I wanted to make the world a better place. And I was not too bad in math. And the combination of not being too bad in math and wanted to improve, to make the world a better place, that combination got me into economics. That's what the father wanted to show revolution. He failed. Maybe then where he failed, maybe I will succeed a bit more. And I think that mixture.
All right. So going back to the problem that you solved. So you've said already, economies eventually stall when they only focus on perfecting old technology. And you said they reach this point of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
You have a very intriguing concept, I think, of resetting the innovation clock.
Yes.
And can you explain to us what does that mean, this resetting the innovation clock to zero, and then link it, if you would, to how it relates to AI?
Yeah. So first there is a big debate, between Robert Gordon, who is a fantastic colleague at Northwestern, and he believes that great ideas have been found already. That it's like a fruit tree. We got the good fruits. The steam engine revolution was a big deal. The electricity revolution was still a big deal. IT, he believes, was less of a big deal. AI, I think now, he thinks, there, but it's maybe he's resetting his own clock, I think. But that's Robert Gordon, who is a fantastic colleague. And Joel Mokyr is more like an optimist. And there is still an ongoing debate. Are ideas harder to find? Did we get the big ideas and now we're running out of steam? Or is there a reset? And my view is that within each field, you end up running out into decreasing returns, but you keep finding new topics, new ways. We saw that, with the two previous sessions, that you always have a reset. So, for example, I look into economics. I use LLM with my friends to identify topics using word recognition and abstracts. And you see within topics, it's a kind of inverted U. You have a rising phase and then a declining phase. But you see, there are all the time new topics emerging. So if you take the upper envelope, it's clearly going up. Even before AI, with AI even more, because AI, you see, new ideas are often recombination of old ideas. With AI, you can recombine much more, and you can select the ideas you want to experiment much more quickly. And that's hence the huge growth potential of AI. So less than ever, even before AI, ideas were not harder to find overall, even less with AI.
Now, you've also described Europe as a sleeping beauty, a place with immense
sleeping
talent.
beauty place,
Sleeping beauty place, immense talent resting on the laurels of incremental, safe improvements. We've talked about Mario Draghi's report and the warning that he's had that if Europe doesn't actually clear away the shackles it needs, regulation, build capital markets, we're not going to get the benefit of growth from technology. And Draghi now warns that this stagnation has reached a point where it is existential. So if AI is the kiss that finally wakes that sleeping beauty, how do we ensure the destruction of old jobs leads to a golden era?
Yeah, so there is a huge thing. So first, Europe, and when I say Europe, it has to include the UK. And I think now that's the great thing is that this, the new world that people talked about this morning, Trump, Putin, the nice part of it is that the UK is back. For us Europeans, UK is back with us. And that, I think, is very important.
I was born in England, I like that.
Sorry?
I was born here, so I'm with you.
Yeah. So, and so the idea is that we have, in the Europe, we have fantastic scientists, engineers, mathematicians. So and people who were pioneers in AI, like Yann Lequin, who was with us in the AI Commission that was mentioned before. So Yann Lequin wants to do the next AI revolution after LLM, and he wants to do it in Europe. And I think, so Europe has enormous potential, and we carry values. We talk about the soft power, rule of law, freedom, more than ever. Where do we have freedom now in the world? In Europe more than anywhere else. And so we have fantastic potential, and it's incumbent on us to get the right institution to harness AI. The growth potential, AI has enormous growth potential for the reason I mentioned, easier to get new ideas. You need to get a mixture of competition policy and industrial policy. In Europe, in the name of competition policy, we precluded industrial policy, unlike in the US, unlike in China. We need to have full steam industrial policy, the equivalent of the DARPA in defense and AI. That's on the one hand. And on jobs, we are closer to the good flex security system. We'll talk about...
Explain that, if you will, flex security.
A flex security system. In Denmark, when you lose your job, for 2 years, you get 90% of your salary, up to a certain level of salary, and the state retrains you and helps you find a new job. And we know that in Denmark, losing your job has no negative effects on health, unlike in other countries. So there will be job destructions with AI, of course. AI will replace tasks, and for some jobs, most of the tasks are replaced by AI, and those jobs are in jeopardy. So it will destroy jobs, but it will create new jobs, AI. Why? Because first, firms that adopt AI become more productive, therefore more competitive, and therefore the world demand for their products increases. And that's what we see, that sales go up. Firms that adopt AI, including generative AI, sales go up because they have more demand. So that productivity effect will be good for employment. And the second thing is that, as I told you, it's much easier to have new ideas with AI. New ideas are new activities, and therefore new jobs. So AI will destroy jobs, but it will create jobs. So you need a system that smoothes out the transition from old jobs to new jobs.
So
that's where the Danish system must be part of
So I want to stay on this
response.
topic because there was so much content in what you just said. If I try and break what you said into two buckets.
Yes.
One is jobs will be destroyed, but jobs will be created, new ideas, et cetera. Help to mention that. My concern, we've talked about it, is that a lot of the narrative coming out of Silicon Valley is not tethered to history and is not tethered to economics. We now have somebody who can actually help us understand that a bit better. And then, no matter what that ratio is, there's going to be a transition. Take us through the Danish model and the policies. So let's first start with jobs. What's your view on this whole question of creation, augmentation, tasks, and destruction?
Yeah, so there will be some, jobs is a collection of tasks. Some jobs, most of the tasks will be replaced by AI. And so those jobs will have to be transformed, okay? But there will be firms that adopt AI, they create jobs because they expand. And there will be new ideas, and new ideas are new jobs. So there will be some job destruction, but there will be for sure job creation. Alors, where jobs, for example, what will change with the jobs? Soft skills, for example, jobs that enhance, the ability of leadership, of coordinating with others, of taking initiative. That's the soft skills. Soft skills will be a very important element where humans are important there. You see, there is also in having to do with healthcare and care, nurses, psychiatrists, geriatrics. There will be need for humans. It cannot be entirely done by machines. It will have, the human element is very important there. Plumbers, electricians, people who help maintain the robotics maintenance, all these jobs also, more than ever, will need a human component. So apprenticeship, so I think it's a set of policies that have been put in place. My view of technology is that technological revolutions are like a horse. A horse can take you to the wall, but it can lead you everywhere you want if you know how to steer the horse. Steering the horse is to put the right policies. So I talk about flex security. I also say encourage firms that enhance soft skills of their workers, push apprenticeship, and change the schooling system. At school, we should learn to learn. So they should be part of the school with AI, but part of the school without AI, where you put emphasis on reading, you should calculate, you should master, reading and mathematics, the basic knowledge, because at school you learn to learn. So if you have a good schooling system with good test scores, it's much easier to put a flex security system on top. So you see, the thing is that the AI has enormous potential. But where I'm less optimistic is, shall we be able to put the right policies and institutions in place to fully harness the growth and employment creation potential of AI.
Why are you less optimistic about that? What are the biggest blockers?
Well, I'm less optimistic because I see that in France we might have a populist government in 1 year. I hope not. I will fight for it. It will not happen. In the UK, there are also some people knocking at the door. The Downing Street would like to get there, and I hope they don't. And in Germany, So the key European countries, I want them to make sure that I have governments who can really implement this, because Europe carries values. It's very important that Europe be back and that we don't miss the AI revolution.
And at its core, when you reset the innovation clock, you're saying you gave us some things that are here and evident about what those new jobs will be and how jobs will evolve. But there's also the springboard of the things that we never see during transition, and therefore resilience, skilling, and a bridge, a safety net that helps with
And if we don't put the safety net, what you get? The populists. You see, this morning there was discussion about what happened in the US, what happened in the UK, or what happened in other countries, and in France with the danger. You know what we have this danger in France? All those who want to vote for the populists, there are people who felt left out, who felt abandoned. That's the cost. So whenever you decide a measure, cut on a social program or whatever, beware that you increase the probability of a populist movement coming in, and you should factor that in. I don't say that you should never be serious on budget, but you have to be very careful that those who vote for the people who said, I tried the left, I tried the right, and I never got anything, I'll try what I've never tried before. But that's the danger.
As you and I have talked about, there are a lot of things that are not working today. Like the fact that 54% of American adults read below the 6th grade level, the fact that that survival rate gap that I was talking about, depending on your postal code, things are not working. And to your point, we are very much in agreement that to make it clear that AI matters in the heartland of every country, we need to be focused on that for education, for health, for every other element of it.
To be inclusive.
So it absolutely has to be inclusive. Okay, you commented on education, but really quickly, you said people need to learn. Talk a little bit more about what we're giving you get to run the government across all of them, yes. And so what would you do here on education? You've highlighted that as
so that would be very important. I make sure that, we know there are things that work well. Classrooms should not be too numerous. There should be maybe not more than 15 pupils per classroom, because otherwise the teacher cannot give attention. And you need a whole part of schooling without AI, where I make sure you read books, you're writing tests, you're graded, but you're not graded to be humiliated, so that you can improve upon yourself. Mathematics, you need to calculate on your own. You don't rely on AI, on calculate. You learn to prove, to complete a mathematical proof. All those things they do in no excuse charter schools in the US, for example, and to get test scores going up. So I think it's important that in Finland, for example, the programs are centralized, the evaluation of schools, and then the schools have autonomy to implement the pedagogical contract. But to get those test scores, I think it's very important to get there. To learn. The basic knowledge has to be really mastered.
I was talking with a minister of digital transformation in one of the countries in Africa who said the important point there when it comes to education is the median age is about 19 and a half. So by definition, there can't be enough teachers to address all of the students. And what kind of a society do you have if you're not teaching students? And therefore, AI is critical to support teachers.
And then then robots cannot do it.
Yes.
And one thing also, we have many.
They can amplify what the teachers are doing.
We have a problem. We have many lost Einsteins and lost Marie Curie and lost. You know what they are? Very smart kids born to families who cannot transmit fully knowledge and aspirations. When you do a reform like they did in Finland, or when you do any reform that improves test scores, you reduce the number of lost Einsteins. Therefore, you increase your innovation power, your innovative power. That's growth enhancing, but you make society more inclusive. Very often people believe that there is a trade-off between being more inclusive and more innovative. No, if you do a reform like in Finland they did in 1970 or other countries, you become more innovative and more inclusive at the same time.
Okay, I know how important it is also you're focused on applying AI to address the planet. We have 40 seconds left, which is not a fair way to do it. But talk about AI and climate change and protecting the planet.
It's true that AI, particularly generative AI, consumes a lot of energy, but it can help save energy. I looked very closely at the main water supply company in France. They use AI to monitor the air system to purify water, and I look at the overall energy balance, they save, because they can turn on and off much more precisely the air systems, they save 10 times more energy than the AI is using doing this task. So it's very interesting that AI, of course, uses lots of energy. I think specialized AI with local computing center will be also a way to reduce energy consumption. But AI can help manage scarce resources and can help firms make transition from dirty innovation and production into green innovation and production. And that transition can be eased by AI as well.
If I put numbers around that, about 4% of the grid today is used, supports data centers.
Yeah.
Going to maybe 12%, as
Yeah.
you and I have talked about. That means the remaining 88% of consumption, if we can use AI to bend the curve on energy utilization and carbon emissions, we're getting a great return for the planet.
That's right, I think.
All right, with that, that was a whirlwind and a masterclass. Watch his Nobel speech. It is amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And amazing.